Well, welcome to our panel. Thank you for being here with us, and also welcome to the 15th annual Concordia Summit. I have been privileged to be a part of Concordia from the very beginning, which is a long time to be here, and just to see the iterations over the last 15 years has been really exciting. And I'm thrilled to be with these amazing panelists with me today to talk about the importance of public-private partnerships and the next chapter in public-private partnerships. As we are in somewhat of a fragmented world, so thinking through how do we effectively create public-private partnerships in this current season. And the distinctive about Concordia from the very beginning has been the emphasis on including the private sector in this summit, but also with the public sector and NGOs that are represented, and all of us represent one or another piece of that. And it has had a P3 award. And it's really the idea that Concordia is a place where we can talk about the most effective public-private partnerships and sometimes create and ideate them while we're here together. So today, we're going to talk about what we all have found through data and experience to be some of the ways to create effective public-private partnerships. And so I'm thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Rita McGrath, who is the Academic Director of Executive Education at the Columbia Business School. She is one of the world's experts on strategy and innovation, and is an author of 4 books, and is, I hear, writing a new one, which will be terrific to talk about. Dr. Vidya is an associate professor of the University of Virginia, and she's a visiting associate professor this semester at Cornell. She has a deep expertise on global supply chains and has worked at the Department of State. So she brings not only the academic perspective, but also the executive branch perspective. And then Susana Eshleman is the president and CEO of Children International. She has served in that position for 14 years and brings really on-the-ground experience, has led the organization into global impact in the last 14 years, and increased global impact, I should say. So I'm thrilled to be joining them today on for this panel. So I'm gonna get right to it because we're running out of time already. So Rita, I'm going to actually start with you. So as we think about this, you have written extensively, have talked about the fact that you're an author. You've written extensively about leading in times of uncertainty. And so what do you feel our public-private partnerships need to do differently to stay adaptive in today's rapidly shifting global landscape?
Well, I think one of the things that becomes clear is that the private sector is moving at increasingly fast rates of change. And so I think the public sector tends to lag a little bit behind that. So I think getting the clock speed right is going to be an important issue going forward.
Absolutely. And from my own experience at the Development Finance Corporation, working in a very unique agency, but the private sector is nimble and quick. And I always loved that aspect of it. And it's getting some of these government agencies to catch up, if you will.
Well, right. And also it's global.
Yes.
Capital flows globally now. So it doesn't just confine itself to one set of national boundaries.
That's exactly right. Yes, thank you. Vidya, talk to us about design principles that make up multi-sector partnerships. They make them resilient. When disruptions hit, whether that's conflict or different kinds of shocks or technological shifts. I mean, I know we've talked a lot about AI probably over the course of today. So just would love to hear your perspective.
Like you said, we're running out of time. And we're running out of time on multiple fronts, especially hitting those outcomes that you're talking about. So we need the increased clock speed that you're asking. And that comes from 2 main things. One, use your technology. Use the technology that is right now up to speed and can be scaled, but adapt it to the context that you need to. And the people on the ground can help you adapt it. The private partners can tell you what's the technology to use. The public partners can give you that foundation or the bridge to say, here is the technology, here is the funding mechanism, here's how we bridge this gap. Right? So that's one thing. The Health Tech Club of Africa was one of the initiatives that used AI to bring different doctors and patients who had different conditions that were more customized solutions, or that were things that you would not typically see in regular regular consultations in the Western world, AI helped connect all of that into a particular hub. So that's what I mean by saying be adaptive, use technology. The second one, and this is really critical no matter what stage you are in the public-private partnership, is have an analytics-based pulse check-in. Build in milestones to measure how well you're doing and look at how you reach those milestones during the project, not at the end, which is what most people do. And then they find a way to take that milestone and write it in their own words. That doesn't help. Build it inside the design principle. I would say take these two things, and we might just about make it in time.
Thank you. I think what you were saying too about building in those milestones and checking in along the way, part of the challenge that I have found is oftentimes, like you said, you wait until the end, and there are going to be issues. There are big, major global challenges that we're trying to address with these public-private partnerships. And so unless you're communicating along the way, you don't know if there needs to be a shift. And we can't wait till the end to say, oh, we should have done this differently.
Now, the results-based financing model does that. We do it with finance, use it for P3s.
Right.
So that's where I'm saying build that bridge.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, Susana, I know that you work on the ground a lot. You're a large NGO, and oftentimes probably one of the critical components of a P3. And so thinking about civil society, we often bring the voices of the vulnerable communities, oftentimes those at which you're working. So they come into the partnership, so bringing those vulnerable voices into the partnership. So from your perspective, what's been the biggest gap that you see in how P3s currently incorporate those perspectives?
Yeah. The biggest gap that we see is that oftentimes partnerships treat the voice of the community as consultation versus co-creation.
Right.
And so when that happens, while partnerships may have good intentions, there's critical perspectives and voices that don't have the opportunity to shape those partnerships. So we miss a real understanding of reality, of the perspective on the ground, the power dynamics that might be at play, or the local societal norms. So at Children International, what we believe is that great impact really starts with listening. Listening early, listening often, and listening deeply, so that the children, the caregivers, the community at large can really help shape those solutions. And when they shape those solutions, they're more relevant, they're more sustainable, and they have their trust. But it does take investment of time, it takes patience, and it takes a real commitment to that shared decision making. So, but we really see this this being truly effective, so we're shifting the way we operate to really have the voice of the community front and center. So for partnerships to be effective, the community really need to help shape the goals, the delivery, and the definition of success.
Because the context is important.
Absolutely.
And the people who are the beneficiaries oftentimes of these partnerships, or the end user, if you will, in some ways, those are the people who need to be helping create what the partnership looks like.
And they're the ones that drive ultimate sustainability.
Sure, that's right. Thank you. I want to remind everyone there is a QR code I think that they're going to put up. If you have questions from the audience, I'll be taking a couple questions at the end. So please feel free. So Rita, I'm coming back to you. So how can partnerships build the kind of trust and governance structures that allow experimentation and innovation without collapsing under risk aversion?
Well, I think the first thing to agree on is that when you're operating in an uncertain situation, and these partnerships obviously are, because if they weren't, you wouldn't need them, you have more assumptions that you're going to be making rather than knowledge. So I think one of the first and early conversations, and it really builds on this idea of doing things by checkpoints or by milestones, is, what are the assumptions that we're making? Are we making the same assumptions? Can we agree on how we're going to test those assumptions? And so through the process of testing assumptions and running experiments, that's how you develop the trust, because I can now see what you're doing, you can see what I'm doing, it's very transparent, and we're getting to know how to work together. I think the big mistake that I see happening is that when you get a big team and all the money up front and these really ambitious goals, and people just haven't had a chance to figure out what their rhythm is, that's when it really starts to fall apart.
Really good. So Vidya, next question for you. How can data sharing and operational transparency be improved between public and private actors who often have very different incentives and constraints?
And that's in 2 minutes. But I'm going to build off the one thing, Rita, you just talked about, right? How do you build trust? Like, one is you trust the people, but second, you have the same basis for information across the different partners. You all speak the same language, and you measure success in the same way. Now, bringing what Susana, you talked about, get the people involved early on. When you get the people involved early on and you create a milestone that's measuring success the same way that the public partner is looking at, the private partner is looking at, and the NGO partner is looking at, that's the data sharing that we need. So, when you're talking about getting medical supplies to Haiti when there are gang wars going on, you need doctors who would tell you what the medical supplies need to be. You need medical professional on the field who will tell you where to reach and how to administer them. You need a logistics company that's going to tell you how best can I get it there. And then finally, you need a storage place or some place to hold all of this in a secure manner. Each one of them is in this partnership to do a good, but they all need to measure their impact or their definition of done in the same way. Or else you will have that the products have shipped, they're sitting in the warehouse, that's it. So you've not actually made an impact.
Right.
So unless you have the same information basis for sharing, it feeds into a decision, and that decision leads to a performance metric that's again common across all partners. That data and information sharing will get you nowhere, even though you have lots of information.
And so when you're thinking about those goals, setting a universal goal for the partnership, each player plays a different piece of that. So there's almost like an ecosystem to achieve that goal. How do you get everyone talking? I mean, like, what are the ways that you do that? I'm just thinking through the process.
How do you get everybody on the same page?
Right.
Right. And my partner in crime, Maggie Morse, is here right now. We've run the P3 Impact Award for the last 10 years.
Yes.
The most successful applications that we see that come in created that partnership and got everyone sitting at the same table and had an economic component, something that mattered to their business, also mattered to the partnership that they measured against. So if it is something like, in this case, UPS getting its vaccine supplies across, they're also reporting against that goal in their quarterly statement, right? If it is the medical professionals who are working on the field in Haiti, they're supported by either the organization or the government that's measuring or has a stake in that process. So as long as you are finding a way to align that performance metric with something you really care about in your regular business, and that takes time. So they spend around 20% of their time goal setting.
Interesting.
Right? And not coming to it at the 90th percent
Right.
of the time of the horizon.
Right.
So that's where, if you get that going, the rest of it, the impact you see from $1,000 or $100,000 is much more than even if you put in $1 million fund, but you didn't get the impact on the ground.
That's right. That's terrific. Thank you. So Susana, last question for you in this round. So how can we make sure that ambitious public-private partnerships actually deliver tangible benefits on the ground for the community that they aim to serve?
Yeah. Well, we believe that to really deliver tangible results, what is critical is to have that shared ownership, shared accountability, and shared sustainability. And what that really means is that the leadership of the community is really put front and center, that they're not seen just as the recipients of funding or resourcing, but just their leadership is front and center. So I'll share a couple examples.
That would be great.
Of what we've seen at Children International. So through our holistic child and youth development around the world, we partner with communities and with local health facilities, public health facilities, and we work on supporting a locally driven action plan that really improves the healthcare in those communities. Okay, and we have seen really encouraging results. We are seeing increased hours of availability of medical providers, increased availability of medicines, and increased usage of the available services by members of the community. What has also been really inspiring is to see that in many cases, in a few cases, we are piloting with youth really leading on the ground. We're seeing this in the Dominican Republic and Zambia. And what's really amazing is that we are seeing some of the best results there.
Oh, interesting.
Even outperforming those local leadership communities made up mostly by adults.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
I think the youth that have come together, now these are young people who we have invested in since they were 2 years old, so we really work on their leadership skills, but I think the sense of empowerment that has come to them as a result of having a partnership that really focuses on something that matters to them has just been really, truly empowering to them.
It's the buy-in, I think, from
That's exactly.
each of the different partners. Everyone has a little bit of a different reason for the buy-in, but everyone has to, and there's ownership then. So it's not that you're an observer to it, but you're actually a participant in it.
Yes, and we are finding the youth to be super creative in how they work with partners.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, so when it comes to reproductive health in the Dominican Republic, they have, the youth have just really ensured that the services that are available to them are what they need, how they need it, with the privacy that they wanted.
That's great.
Yeah.
Terrific.
So I also wanted to tell you about, in Colombia,
Yes.
our research partnership with Abbott
Okay.
and with Fundación Santa Fe de Bogotá, where we are generating data to better understand and address malnutrition, child malnutrition and stunting, and it's just been an amazing partnership.
That's great.
And the result of which could impact policy in the future. And we believe that the future health programs and outcomes will be the result of the good work being done here with just evidence-based solutions with trust and transparency, and that's key to moving this forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have a few questions from the audience, and I'm going to pose them both, and then you can choose which one you'd like to answer. So the question is, what design features made your successful P3 resilient? So that's one of the questions. And the other question is, how should the public and private sector change in order to support each other more effectively? So does anyone have anything to add to those questions?
I can take the first one.
Sure.
Right. When we were evaluating what made for successful P3s, we were looking at impact. Based on number of partners and the budget that you had, how much were you able to get an impact? And 5 things stood out. 2 I mentioned. One is adapting technology and having an analytics pulse check. But there are other 3 that I think are very good when you think of how to form a partnership. One is alignment in policy, both from a funding place and a donor place. Why? Because when you come from a funding perspective, it's easier to get not just the base dollars that is needed, but the increment budget if you need it. And it comes faster, right? On the implementing side, most of the times you need local people and government, some connection with the government to be able to be effective. So policy alignment. The second one is clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and this is where a lot of partnerships on the ground, you get them involved ahead of time, and a lot of time they could be involved in designing what that implementation phase would look like, rather than getting them only when you get to implementation. And then, which is what a lot of P3s don't really think about, is an exit strategy. And when I say an exit strategy, whatever you're doing has to now dovetail into something mainstream or into some other program, or have a very clear-cut exit strategy on who is going to pick it up after you leave, so that it doesn't just die down.
Sure.
Right. Those are the things somehow which we find common across, I think, more than 1,500 to 2,000 applications that we looked at.
It's really good.
So I guess one observation I would make is that without a clearly defined strategy, and by that I mean who's the population you're addressing, what issue is that you're focusing on, it's very easy for efforts to kind of get fritters away, like peanut butter, right? You don't make really impact on anything. So an interesting example of this was Harlem Children's Zone, and the head of that for many, many years was very wise, and he said, look, I could do old age, I could do poverty, I could do unemployment, I'm not doing any of those things. I'm focused on this very clear mission about kids in Harlem having the same opportunity as kids in the suburbs, and anything else was just somebody else is doing that, right?
Sure. Yes, very important point, to stay laser focused on what you're trying to achieve. And Vidya, when you said about this exit, I think that's a really critical piece, because oftentimes these public-private partnerships sort of go into perpetuity and you have no end really in sight. And then there's confusion, and often I have seen that you lose the focus of what you're trying to achieve. It's sort of mission creep, if you will, and it gets too expansive or it gets lost in translation. And I think it's a really important piece, having been part of these P3s throughout my career. Do you have anything to add, Susana?
I would just put an exclamation mark on your point that sustainability needs to be a key part of the accountability.
Yes.
And ensure that the partnerships that we're building today really can be maintained and evolved by the community leadership.
Yes. And to your point, that it's passed off to the community, and then they're the owners of it.
That's exactly right.
And I think that sometimes P3s are intended to ignite and to address an issue that then will have the community taking on, after a certain period of time, the exit, then the community is the one that's responsible for it, which is what we should be aiming for. Another question came in about regulatory and policy changes that would unlock higher quality P3 pipeline. I don't know if anyone has a thought on that.
Well, I think the design of any system, and capitalism responds to incentives. So I think what we often find is that there are these policies that work at cross purposes with what the entity's trying to achieve.
Sure.
So I think having greater clarity about what is the outcome, what is the impact we want to have, and then having the policies that support that. So you'll see stupid stuff like procurement policies, for example, that make it virtually impossible for a small business to participate in the private partnership because they're asking for crazy credit requirements. So somebody has to go sort of sort all that out.
Sure, absolutely.
A lot of the development banks would spend a lot of time, I know the World Bank has done this a lot, doing capacity building around P3s. Why? Because at the end of the day, anything is successful only if you also have a recourse in law and rules and how it survives. Without that, you could have a lot of these informal relationships, and many a times that would just be cash transfers. That doesn't hit a development goal. That does not lead to empowerment, and that absolutely does not meet any of the sustainability related outcomes that we would talk about. So when you talk of rules and regulations, that it's trying to provide that foundation to make sure that these P3s actually have a place and they're done in a systematic manner.
Susana, any thoughts on that?
Yes.
So just in our last minute, I just want to thank you for the work that you all are doing on the ground and through academia and through really thinking through strategy and innovation. Because I personally, having worked with President Bush during the PEPFAR initiative, which is one of the largest public-private partnerships that's taken place, saved 25 million people's lives, to the work that I did with African First Ladies, helping them really think of their ecosystem, bringing in the right ministers, and then having us bring in the right private sector partners to align with them. Those are the things that unlock all of the potential that people have in these countries and communities. And so I personally think P3s are some of the most effective ways for us to continue to advance human flourishing around the world. And so thank you for being with us today and for your questions, and have a great rest of your summit.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. I really appreciate it.